Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Todd and Shane's SharePoint podcast number 375, recorded live Wednesday, February 7th, 2018. And it's funny because I put February 8th in my notes, so it's not really February 8th, it's February 7th. I, of course, am, if you're watching the video feed, don't be alarmed. I'm on the wrong side, but I am still Todd Clint. So don't let that throw you off. We're taking feedback in the channel, the Slack channel. There's much discomfort and upheaval from the fact that I am on this side and Shane is on that side. So we'll see. Maybe we'll try to keep things on edge. Maybe next week I'll be on the top and Shane will be on the bottom. That came out sounding different than I expected it to, but we're both here. If you want to talk to me and give me your feedback on how you feel about that, you can hit me up on Twitter at Todd Clint or email me, todd@toddclint.com. Shane, you're not over there. Shane, would you like to tell the folks how to get a hold of you?
Sure. Hi, my name is Shane Young with Bold Zebras. Those guys. No, that's, if you've watched my YouTube channel, that's my intro for that. Anyway, I am now the official cameraman for this show, so I just noticed, for example, that when Todd points with his right hand that it is cut off because it is behind me, so it's kind of awkward. It's like he's doing a puppet thing right now. It's like, hey. Anyway, yeah, you can hit me up on the Twitters at Shane's Cows to tell me how much better the show looks when I am responsible for broadcasting it.
Yeah, so that's a good segue into the production notes. So what has happened, we use this, we have two pieces of software we use every week. We use XSplit to broadcast it and all that kind of stuff. And then we use Skype to bring the other person in. And so normally I'm running XSplit, Shane and I Skype, we do a video thing, I bring his video in. Monday morning, the Skype desktop client, which is the one that XSplit supports, decided to no longer let me sign in. So I can only sign into Skype with the app, the modern app, the new one, and XSplit doesn't support that. So I can't host the podcast anymore until we get that figured out. And it's on many of my machines. It's not just a machine. And I've tried it on multiple networks, so it's something with my account or something. So I don't know how we're going to fix that. But more importantly, I'm worried about what happens if Shane's account falls victim to it as well. So we run out of accounts to host with. But that's what's going on there.
Yeah, that's one of the challenges, right? So Todd and I, for some crazy reason, go to great lengths to make the video version of this show, right? And it turns out about 7 people other than our moms watch it. Yeah. But so we just joined a new podcast group, and we're hoping that someone there has got a better solution, because we'd really like to, up our video game here a little bit. I don't know why. That purely because we like to see how pretty we look to each other. Like, I'm like, Todd, look at me. And he's like, oh. But yeah, so a lot of software fighting that we spend doing this, and it is kind of educational, but there's got to be a better solution. One day we'll figure it out.
I've been saying that for the 9 years that I've been doing this podcast. There's got to be a better way to do this, and in 9 years I have not found it.
Well, that's not fair, right? Because you've switched solutions at least 3 times, right? There was the Ustream, there was the
Stickcam, originally Stickcam, and then Ustream.
Yeah, and then there was the Hangouts, right?
Yep. And Mark in the chat room is asking why we don't use a Hangout. Hangouts do not allow you to do 2 people on the screen at the same time. And once you get a third person in the Hangout, it doesn't let you control who has the focus. And that's really why we quit using the Hangouts. Mainly because we couldn't both be on the screen at the same time.
Yeah, we're both screen attention lovers.
Yep.
So.
Lovers, yes. Appreciators. So we're still fighting with that. But we are, again, Wednesday morning. We've moved the live show to Wednesday morning, 10 o'clock Central, 11 o'clock Eastern. So we've got a bunch of people in there. As we've moved it, we lost a couple of people that used to be able to do it Monday afternoons, but we've gained a bunch more, so that's good. So join on in. You can, if you go to youtube.com/ToddClintNetcast, you can subscribe. And then when you subscribe, you'll get a little ping when we go live, and you'll know to jump in. And we also have a Slack channel where the hooligans are hanging out now. Because of the way Slack works, I have to invite you. And you can go to ToddClint.com/podcast, and it's got all the stuff there. And there's a link to ask for an invitation, and we'll send you an invitation. You can join in and heckle along with the rest of the hooligans.
Yeah, you can be in there like Mark, who's trying to give himself an associate producer role. Mark, it's not happening, but that's the type of stuff you can do in the chat room. Is try and weasel your way into the credits and get mentioned on the show.
I like Mark's approach, though, because it's always that thing, dress for the job that you want, do the job that you want. So Mark wants to be an associate producer, so he's doing those things, giving us our 5-minute warnings and all that. So I like his approach. It's very tested. For production notes, the other thing is I have moved my website. I've been threatening to do this for like a month. and it is done. So if you go to toddclint.com now, you are taken to my new server. You'll notice a few things. Number one, the new server seems to be a touch quicker, which is nice. The other thing is all of the links now forward to HTTPS links as opposed to HTTP. So that's nice. I've got the Google Analytics bit baked into the master page. That's accessing the HTTP link for Google Analytics. I need to update that master page so that you won't get that warning anymore. And that is the www part of toddclint.com. The podcast itself, the media.toddclint.com, has not been moved yet. Probably do that today or tomorrow. And that will be all out there. So hit the new website. Let me know what you think. See if anything's broken. It should look exactly like the old one, except you shouldn't get the nasty gram in your browser that says it's an unsecured link. But other than that, it should look the same.
Yeah, and I think the only other thing we're going to have to do is keep an eye on Google, right? You know, when we search for loopback and things like that, is it figured it out? Is it rewired from the HTTP to the HTTPS successfully? And still makes me nervous for you.
Yes, I do too. My hope is that the redirect will happen automatically. So hopefully the crawler will understand when it goes to HTTP and gets the permanent moved redirect. The other thing is Google super duper loves HTTPS links. So hopefully they've built some logic in that when people switch from HTTP to HTTPS, like Google has told them to, that they don't lose their spot. That's my hope.
We shall see.
All right. For topics, the first thing I wanted to do this last week, but Lori couldn't be here. She was busy, so I postponed it to this week. But I got the birthday card. I can't see myself very well. So this was from the Birthday Charity Fund Drive. We raised over $3,000 this year, and every year the folks that do that send me a card and tell me what things that they have donated to and who donated to them. So I appreciate all of that. A lot of great ones in here. Don't have time to list them all off, but some missionary work, the Electronic Fund Foundation or Electronic Freedom Foundation, some military stuff, food banks, breast cancer, all kinds of great stuff. So thanks to everybody that did this. I will send you all personal emails and thank you for that. And so this year I will be matching the funds. I have not yet decided how to do that yet, but I will be matching the very charitable gifts that you all have given. And I don't have the total. I don't know if Lori can bring it up yet, but I think over the course of this, we've raised, well, more than $10,000, probably 12 or so over the course of this thing. So that's very cool. Very impressed with all of you listeners for doing that. It makes me a little, gets me right in the feels.
Oh, that was very, very, very nice of everyone. I am disappointed. I was expecting some inappropriate birthday card from Lori, not just a classic, grandma-style birthday card. So I'm a little disappointed there. I was looking for a happy birthday or, a dog on a skateboard.
So that assumes that Lori only sends me a single birthday card every year. This is officially the so yeah, because so I don't think she did it this year, but other years she sent it to people and had them sign it. So it's got to be something that and my parents are on that list. So it's
just saying, I want a happy birthday.
Apparently next year, Laura, you got to up your game. So, all right. So we got a bunch of things and then some fun stuff at the end. So we might blow through the important stuff so we can talk about the fun stuff. A whole bunch of really great things came out. So the way this podcast works when it works well is Shane and Lori and I have a OneNote that we share. And throughout the week, as we see things that get our attention from blog posts or tweets or whatever, we throw it in the outline. And then, the day that we do it live, it's all in there. We flesh out the notes and all that. The last week has been busy. I've been throwing things in there like it's my job. I guess it kind of is. So there's a bunch of those things that have come up over the last week. One of the first ones was a blog post from all of our friend, Spence Harbar. So Spence, this man needs no introduction. When I saw Spence in person last year, a couple of months ago in Slovenia, he was doing a talk about the user profile service in SharePoint 2016 and how it's changed and what it does do and what it doesn't do and how to implement MIM if you need the things that it doesn't do and all that. One of the big problems with the SharePoint 2016 user profile service is, some limitations. We've kind of come full circle. It's basically exactly the same as the user profile service was in SharePoint 2007, which was good. I mean, that's not a bad thing. But one glaring deficiency is it doesn't bring pictures in. It doesn't bring in the profile pic for the user from Active Directory. And as SharePoint has gotten more user specific and all these things, that picture is a big deal now. It wasn't such a big deal in 2007, but it's a big deal now. And so when we lost that FIM back end, we lost the ability to pull those pictures in. And so if you add full MIM, you can add all that, but full MIM just for the pictures is a waste of time. So one of the things that I asked Spence for when I saw him a few months ago, I had tried to piece together the pieces of how to do that all in PowerShell. So anytime you've got a big problem, you break it down into consumable chunks and figure out, I know how to pull pictures out of Active Directory. I know how to upload pictures from a file share into SharePoint. I know that I need to run the update profile thing to make the three, but I didn't have one little piece that I needed to attach the image to the user. And so I asked Spence about that. And he's like, I got some PowerShell scripts that will do that. I'll publish it here in the next week. I'll send you a link. That was like September. But he made good on it last week. So Spence published this, and it's also got a link to a knowledge base article from Microsoft. And basically, the use case for this is if you've got SharePoint 2016 in a small environment, you're not going to run full MIM, you're doing your profile import from AD, and you want those user profile pictures, there's some PowerShell scripts that will do that for you. And they look pretty simple. I haven't tried them yet, but they look pretty simple. So thanks to Spence for that.
God bless Spence, right? He knows so much about that darn engine, and it's really a terrible engine, right? No one wants to know anything about it, but Spence, he fell on the sword, fell on the grenade, whatever your visual is, and he suffers through it so that people like you don't have to go figure it out.
Yeah, and so it's funny. So Spence, in a previous life, did a bunch of identity stuff, so he's got a good, solid foundation to build on that. But in his blog post, he talks about all that. He complains a bunch about all of the pieces that don't fit right and how so it's a great blog post. Read it. It'll help you understand how the whole thing works. But I've got a couple of customers who have wanted this, who have upgraded from previous versions of SharePoint to 2016 and wanted the pictures and missed them. And so I'll be revisiting those customers and getting that going for them. But thanks for that, Spence. And just another one. Another great thing that these podcast notes provide is a great way for me to find things later. So a lot of these articles get in there just so I can look for them later.
Oh, or for someone like me who writes a monthly article on all the news, he just comes into our OneNotes, grabs them, and publishes the article. Details.
Yep. A very similar article that came out this last week was how to build a great employee directory in Office 365 and SharePoint. And this is something that, again, our friend Mark Anderson, he's been doing a lot of this stuff. I think he's published this thing for several versions of SharePoint. How to use search and the user profile service and all that, and to build a good online employee directory that's automatically updated and all of that. And so he and the folks at Hyperfish, that's Chris Johnson, CJ, and Jeremy Thake, and a bunch of those people, they published this together so you can get a white paper that will walk you through the process of how to do it. And then Jeremy interviewed Mark on one of their podcasts, and so Mark kind of talks about it. But this is one of those easy wins that as a SharePoint administrator or an Office 365 administrator, you can get to really get people excited about SharePoint. There's a bunch of things, putting the company lunch menu on the home page is a good one. And just having a good, active, well-updated employee directory is another good one to do that. So I highly recommend this. Again, it's all free. It's an easy win. And Mark and Jeremy are both pretty smart folks. So give that a listen.
Yeah, like you said, it's the easy win. It gets people, all right, there is something of value out here. I see my pretty face, right? You put an employee directory. Everyone wants to go see what they look like in it. And it just gets
and make
them
fun of their
products.
Pictures and complain about how bad they look. And it's a thing.
Yeah. Say, hey, look, my cowlick, my barber was there this week, so it was good. That type of stuff.
We're going to have to take that colic out and post, that's all.
Gotcha.
If you're not watching the video, I got a colic that sticks up, and Shane and Mark and everybody's been making fun of it. And I'm going to wear a hat for the next podcast.
Yeah. So this next one, right, this had to get you excited because you are such a lover of the OneDrive. There was a note, free OneDrive until your existing contract runs out. Todd, tell us how this changed our lives.
So just when I think the folks at OneDrive have done the impossible, the best, the coolest thing ever, they go and do it again. So the OneDrive team tweeted out a couple of days ago that if you are on some competing inferior cloud storage provider, I'm looking at you, Box, Dropbox, Google Drive, whatever. If you're on there and you've got a contract, everybody wants to pay it up front, and you want to move to OneDrive for business, but you don't want to do it because you got 6 months left on your whatever. You don't want to be paying two providers, the sunk cost fallacy and all that. Microsoft will let you use OneDrive for Business for free for the duration of your existing contract with one of their competitors. So if you sign up from now until June 30th, which will probably be about a week after this actually gets published, you'll get that for free so long as you give them a minimum of 500 user commitment. So that's pretty cool. That's a smart marketing thing. That's understanding your customer and understanding what the barriers to entry are and taking advantage of that. So taking care of it. I like that.
Yeah, I mean, who doesn't love OneDrive for business, right? It's a great platform, and I think we've talked about this before. But I don't have anything on my local computer anymore. It all lives in OneDrive.
Yeah, so that's a funny story. So I've been for many years using a program called CrashPlan to back everything up, and they're getting out of the consumer space and they're just doing commercial things. And so the product's going to go away. I got to find something different by August. And so I've been looking around to figure out what I'm going to do to replace it. And I'm like, man, do I even care? Like, do I even need it? Because everything is in the cloud, and yeah, I mean, most stuff, Office and all that. So I could probably start with an empty hard drive and have a usable computer in a couple of hours. I mean, I'll have to keep installing things as I remember that I need them, but man, for the most part, all my stuff's just there. Yeah.
And we're going to both test that, right? One of these days we get around to formatting our computers.
Yeah, and Mark in the chat room brings up an interesting thing. So this whole free thing is for OneDrive for Business, but I also have OneDrive as part of Home, OneDrive Consumer, and for $100 a year, man, I don't know how they do this. $100 a year, if you have an Office 365 Home plan, you get 5 accounts on Home, and that gives you a terabyte of OneDrive Consumer, all of the Office apps, something special in Skype, I can't remember what it is, for $100 a year. That is just insane.
The version of Skype that doesn't work for the show, probably.
Yes, probably so. And so Stacy's saying, I just wish external users could sync locally with OneDrive. I have not tried that. So you're saying if they put the OneDrive next-gen sync client on, but they're an external, I have not tried that. We should touch base afterwards, Stacy. I'm curious about this.
Yeah, because you sync one of my folders, right?
So that's OneDrive Consumer.
So maybe that's the difference. OneDrive for Pleasure lets it work.
Yeah. So we tried that. And the good thing about this is the OneDrive team, man, those guys are on the ball. We've been complaining about stuff in OneDrive, and they're just checking that list off. So this might be one of the things that we talked to them about.
And they gave us those great blue sunglasses you're currently wearing.
I know, my OneDrive sunglasses. Yeah. So yeah, kudos to the OneDrive team. Another great win. I think this is a great idea for them.
All right, what else we got? It looks like automatically redirecting stuff. This sounds like it came from you having to use your blog.
Yes, this is one of those things. I was moving my blog, and part of the impetus for moving the blog was to get everything to HTTPS. I've been meaning to do it, but since it worked, I wasn't going to touch it. Well, now I'm moving it, and so I decided to do this. And in IIS, there are 2 incredibly similar yet completely different pieces of functionality that sound like they do this. There is the HTTP redirect and the URL rewrite features, 2 completely different things. Well, they sound exactly the same. If you remember, Shane, you and I spent a very frustrating night in a hotel room once trying to figure all that out. We've spent many frustrating nights in hotel rooms, but this is. And so whenever I have to do this for me or for a customer or whoever, I can never remember which of the tools to use for what and how. And so this was a blog post that I found that does the URL rewrite. And it's a decent one. Unfortunately, that tool has not gotten the attention that it deserves. And so it hasn't gotten updated like I would like it to have gotten updated.
And our associate assistant producer is now pasting links in the chat room. It's confusing me. I think he's been delegated to assistant to the assistant. Yeah,
and so he put a link to Outlook Premium. I thought they pared a bunch of that back. I'd have to check that out again. But that was something that was going to let you have custom domains and things like that. But yeah, so if you need to, so this redirect stuff, right now I'm using it for a couple of things. I'm using it to redirect all traffic to HTTP, www.toddclint.com to HTTPS, and to bring in the query strings and the long paths and all that. It just kind of does a swap. I'm using it for that. And I'm also using it for my short URLs. So if you go to toddclint.com/SP2016 builds, it pops you to the actual wiki page for that. So you don't have to remember all that. And so it does both of those things in different ways, but that's just a good one. It's a nice little tool to have in your toolbox. if you're moving to HTTPS.
And you're doing both of those with the redirect, right? Not the rewrite.
No, I don't think so. Let me check. I'm on that server right now. I think I'm using one for one and one for the other. The other thing I'm doing is I have a specific web app in IIS for the redirects. So yes, I am using the URL rewrite feature for both of those things, but I'm using it in different web apps.
Awesome. Yeah, like Todd said, read the blog post because it gets confusing real fast. But, we were in a hotel in Cleveland and we sat there for hours trying to change one little piece and using one tool and the other. And
so close. It was like we had 3 things we had to accomplish. 2 of them worked 100% using one technique, and then the third one would work half the time, and it was maddening. But yes, I'm using the URL rewrite, not the HTTP rewrite.
Yeah. And then Stacy asked you, who do you get your SSL certificates from? You said DigiCert. I'm with you as well, right? DigiCert has been very kind to us MVPs, and so if you guys are looking for somewhere to get a cert, and I've used like code signing certs from them. I've used web certs, so definitely check these guys out.
Yeah, so in the interest of full transparency, DigiCert does give us as MVPs free certs. And so that is, I'll be honest, that's a big reason why I checked them out the first time. But that was many years ago, and they have absolutely earned my business ever since then. So a couple of things that DigiCert does that's really great. Number one, they have an app that you can load. You can do it all on the web if you want, but they have an app that you can load on your server that will create your requests for you and show you all your certificates and let you pull your stuff out. It's a really great thing that lets you manage your certificates. The other thing is they've got great instructions online for everything. And even though they have this great app and the great instructions, I screwed something up on one of my things, and their support was fast. They knew it immediately what I had done because I'm an idiot, and got it taken care of right away. So I'm a big fan of DigiCert.
Yeah, and they're same thing. I had to work with their support quite a bit because to get a code signing certificate, you got to go through a lot of extra validation stuff, and so those guys were great. They picked up the phone right away. They walked through, did some stuff. So yeah, big fans. So
when I got the cert for my new website, I had to do the revalidation thing because apparently whoever governs that has changed the rules on that, so you have to revalidate more frequently. But it was an easy phone call and all that. One thing that I will tell you for people out there, advice, if you have SSL certificates, obviously they expire in a year or whatever. Something that I started doing like 15 years ago because I screwed it up is like a month before that, put a recurring event in Outlook that says the certificate's going to expire. Because there's always these niggling little things like you're on vacation the day that it expires, so you can't be in the office, or you have to do this extra validation thing, and so you're trying to 5 o'clock your time to update your cert, and then it gets stuck because you have to do the validation. So help future you out. Put in a reminder in your Outlook to remind you to update that.
Yeah, and that's universal advice. Right? I mean, once a month you see a news article about someone like, oh, we forgot our certificate. Duh. Well.
Yeah, and it's people like Google and Microsoft. I mean, how often you say, oh, your SSL cert's expired, dummy. Yeah.
All right, what's next? You want to...
A couple of quick ones, and this is more the notes for Todd bit than for you guys, but I've been doing some SharePoint 2016 installs for customers, and you have to have the Office Online servers, the old Office web apps, the WAX, whatever you want to call them. And the install is pretty simple. The configuration is pretty simple. But one of the things that you do have to do is there's no prereq installer that installs all the Windowsy things, and so you have to do all that. It's a simple Google search every time you do it, but depending on which version of Windows you're using, there's different things, different Windows features you have to add. And so Jeff Jones, who's a big friend of the show, known Jeff for years, wrote a good blog post on how to do that, and he actually walks you through the thing. It's a good soup to nuts install. So if you need to install the Office Online server and just not quite confident on what to do, go to Jeff's blog post, the link in the show notes and all that, walks you through it, and it works out pretty great.
Yeah.
Nothing to add to that. And again, every SharePoint 2016 farm should have this.
Yeah, it's cut and dry. There's no color required.
Yeah. And then just as a segue thing, Jeff today also tweeted out an article, a knowledge base article, Microsoft article on how to create a Windows PowerShell profile. And this is, kind of some stuff that automatically runs when you open up a specific PowerShell host or whatever. And there's just a ton of gold in those hills. You can set things, have the transcript start, set specific variables for yourself, add paths to where your custom functions and all that are. Great stuff in there. So I like that one.
Yeah, and Jeff links off to the Microsoft documentation. Lots of words, lots of reading. I'm not very good at reading. Not a core competency of mine.
It is not.
So I made a video on how to make PowerShell profiles. I probably made that 3 or 6 months ago, but I just thought since Jeff was pulling an old TechNet, I thought I should pull an old video.
Yeah, and kind of getting off topic here, that reminds me of a funny conversation I had with some friends of mine a couple of years ago about providing transcripts for the podcast, which we used to do a while back. And it made it very obvious to me that some people, and in some situations, prefer to have a video that walks them through. Some people prefer to have the article that gives them the instructions, but there is no universal, this is the right way to do it, because every situation is different, every person is different. So yes, your video is a good complement to the written article.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that I think some of the major vendors are the light bulb's starting to go on, right? That for years and years and years, they've produced knowledge bases and giant, walls of text to solve every problem and create all the documentation, but half the world, literally half the world can't read's the wrong word, doesn't like to consume information by reading, right? They want to go to YouTube, type in the same exact thing, and watch someone do the same words that are on the screen. And yeah, they've got to start migrating their content, and that's going to be part of the success for companies like Microsoft, right? How well they adapt to this generation who wants video instead of the written word.
Yeah. And with the podcast, it was funny because it was exactly the opposite argument. So I remember talking to somebody, I do a podcast, blah, blah, and the one guy's like, do you have a transcript for that? I'm like, no, that's just dumb. Why would I have a transcript for my podcast? That makes no sense. And so he's like, have you ever, been on a call or something at work and half paying attention and saw a link to something you were really interested in and click it and it was a damn video and you wish you could just read it instead? I'm like, oh yeah, I hate when that, son of a gun. So it's all very specific to the situation, how you learn, all that. Yeah. In the chat room, Mark Chrisman has put up a post to his GitHub. I don't want to say it publicly if he doesn't want it out there, but he does a bunch of stuff with profiles, and I like some of the ideas that he's got in there. He does things like set date variables and all of that. Just yesterday, we're talking 18 hours ago, I was writing a PowerShell script for something and I needed the date in a very specific format, and I had to go to another script that I'd written years ago that had it in the format that I wanted and tweak it a little bit, because you always need the date in that whatever format.
You didn't go watch my YouTube video on how to do the date? Come on.
God, no. Good Lord, no.
You'd soon just be like, no, it's impossible. It's in that video. I can't watch that video, so it's just impossible.
No, I've got your channel blacklisted. So Mark has put his thing out there. You can go to github.com, and it's SPAATZ 965. And he's got his profile in there. So that's a good thing. I don't have my date stuff set in there, but that is a good idea to do that, because I'm always looking for 4-character year _ 2-character month _ 2-character day for sorting and all that. And every time it's like reinventing the damn wheel. I got to go find it in another script and copy it out.
100% agree.
Yep. All right, so that is the fun technical stuff. Now the cool stuff, the things that we really wanted to talk about.
Only took us a half hour to get here, And you already heard, right? The first topic has my kids involved with it, and my kids are home. It's a snow day. The dog's upstairs barking, so I apologize, but I don't know what to do. But yeah, so the first topic here. So Todd and I have talked about the book several times over the 375 episodes. That's the book Outliers.
Yeah.
Right. So Outliers talks about different scenarios and different things that have happened, and people go back and look at it and they realize that there are keys to some of these people's success, and
Yeah, and let's set a couple of things. The author's name is Malcolm Gladwell.
Yep.
Read all of Malcolm's books, all great stuff. And in this one, he's talking about outliers in a field. So you'll have a bunch of people who play soccer, but there's always these outliers that are better than everybody else. Why is that? How can we? And like Shane said, after the fact, you look back and you're like, oh, yeah, that's why. Our buddy Bill Gates is in that book. I love the story of Bill Gates. Yeah.
Yes, yeah. It turns out Bill, right, just had all of these advantages that no one ever realized, right? He had access to a computer, unlimited access to a computer back when computers didn't exist. And that was a big part, in theory, of why he got through there.
Yeah. And so that part, so we've all heard the 10,000 hours thing. You need 10,000 hours of good practice to become an expert at something. And he covers that a bunch in that book. Gladwell didn't come up with that, but he references somebody else's research. And then, so that was part of what Gates and some of the others, and the thing that you're going to talk about in a minute here, builds on that 10,000 hours thing. And what I had not taken from that book the first time I read it was why he mentioned that. What I took from that was, if I want to get good at something, I have to, deliberately practice it for 10,000 hours. But that was not why he brought it up at all. Have you and I talked about this? I can't remember.
I don't think so.
So Gladwell also has a podcast, and he's been on a bunch of podcasts. But he talked about that, and he's like, I didn't write that well because the wrong message came out of it. So Gates is a perfect example. So Gates became crazy good at computer programming computers because he got his 10,000 hours. But that wasn't the message from there. The message from there was, if you want to get really good at something, you need to put in 10,000 hours. And to be able to put in 10,000 hours, you need to be able to put in 10,000 hours. You need to have the support network that lets you do that. You need to not be working 3 jobs. You need to have the ability to dedicate 10,000 hours to something to be an expert. So the whole having 10,000 hours is kind of the middle story. The lead is you need the support, and Gates had it.
Yeah. Right, and to put it in perspective, right, 10,000 hours is 5 straight years of full-time work. 5 years, right, 40 hours a week, 50 hours a year of work to get to this expert status.
Yeah, and I love the Beatles. The Beatles is one of the things he's talking about, how everybody's like, oh, the Beatles just came out of nowhere. And he's like, no, they didn't. They were set up in Hamburg, Germany for a couple of years, just playing crappy bars, 6 hours a night every day of the week. That's how they became the Beatles. There's a bunch of other things, but that's how they became the Beatles.
Yeah, we're only on show 375. It's called 30 show on average. We got a long way to 10,000, so woo!
Yeah, we are nowhere near becoming a master or experts at this. So tell me what part of Outliers rang true with you with your kids' soccer teams.
Yeah, so my kid plays, my oldest plays select soccer, right? He's played for a couple years now, and it's probably the number 1 or number 2 club here in Cincinnati. We're a bigger city, right? We got 1 million people running around. And so we were signing up for, the teams were signing up for this tournament we're going to go play out in a couple weeks. And the lady, the admin, said, I was filling out, because part of it, you got to provide their birth certificates and all this registration. She's like, as I was doing this, I realized that, that every kid on the first team was born in January, February, or March. And all the other guys were born the rest of the year. She's like, that's just really weird, because she'd never read Outliers. And she's like, just a random observation. And my wife heard it, and she relayed it to me. And I was like, it's perfect in practice, right? If you want your kid, right, I'll save you a chapter of Outliers. If you want your kid to be the best at a sport, you need to have a January 1 birthday.
If that's the cutoff.
Yeah, assuming that, you do calendar year type of things, and that's what soccer's went to. So he's an 09. So you got to figure out the sport they want to play, what is the year cutoff, and you need to be born in that first month of that cutoff. If you end up you mess up, your kid comes early in December, you've ruined their chances. So it's sad, but it's played out thousands and thousands of times.
Yeah, and so in the book they cover sports, hockey specifically. But it's applicable in all other places. So the idea for Shane's kids specifically is, boys, and in sports, customarily, the older they are, the bigger they are, the stronger they are, the faster they are. And so being born at the very, so that you're the oldest of the group, when you're very young, you happen to have a little bit of an edge, and that edge gets amplified because not only do you have the edge, but then you get to play more because you're better. So it just magnifies throughout your career. And then by the time, Grant's only, 8 or 9?
8.
8. The gap has just gotten so wide between kids born at the beginning and kids born at the end, the younger kids, that the younger kids just have no chance of getting the time in and getting the hours in. But it's also the same for schools. Kids at the beginning of cutoffs for school years end up being older when they go to school. They retain better, so they're better at math, so they get put in higher placement programs because it's all it's funny because you look at it and you're like, wow, that makes perfect sense.
Yeah, and it's right, but there are outliers to the outliers, I guess, right? Full transparency. So back to Grant's club, right? We've got the 2 teams, and so the first team, the top team, it's January, February, March, except for one kid on that team who is actually a year younger. He is so good that he has made the year older's first team, right? And that turns out that's genetics, right? So both his parents played in college. Both his parents own a soccer club, like a training. So the kids play. He's got his 10,000 hours in probably already because he's been around soccer since the day he was born, right? Mom kept dragging him because she did lessons 7 days a week, so he was in the gym 7 days a week, just kicking that silly ball. So,
it's really interesting to see how this stuff. And Gladwell is just a little off kilter. Like, he just sees the world a little differently than the rest of us do. Normally we make fun of those people, but he has turned that into an ability to see things and trends. He's written a bunch of books. I think I've read them all. Just really great things. His podcast is called Revisionist History, and it is again his little tilted, just off by a little bit view of historic events and pieces that we think made it happen but didn't actually happen the way we think. Very interesting stuff. And he's a great storyteller. I like the guy. There's a couple of the revisionist history ones where I just absolutely hated the topic, hated his take on it, hated everything about it, but just love listening to him talk. So highly check it out.
That's how you feel about when I talk also, right? Just, the words are so soothing.
Oh, that is not even close to true. Oh, my God.
All right, so next random topic, right? This is where the reason we make the show. We'll talk about this stuff whether you people listen or not.
Yep. This is for
but yeah, so I can't say that word. The big game was this past week, past weekend, and all right. So Todd and I have spent a lot of time talking to you guys about cord cutting and stuff, and our dear friends PlayStation View. Todd and I both have committed to them as our streamer.
Yep.
They had a real hard time streaming the Super Bowl.
Yes.
So I don't know. Did you have the same issue as I did?
Well, so no, but because I can't stream NBC Live where I'm at, and I went to a buddy's place to watch the game. But I had my own troubles. So you tell your troubles, and then I'll tell my troubles.
So for about half of the world, probably not true, but a whole bunch of people on Twitter, PlayStation View just went offline for the NBC channel, right? And so this is people who were fortunate enough to get NBC, the over-the-air local station, through their PlayStation View subscription, which I'm one of. For me, the stream was really choppy, right? It was just kind of a little jerky-herky, probably like the podcast looks when we broadcast. Yeah. So they achieved our level. But so this was interesting, right? It was real easy. A lot of people freaked out. But it was a good reminder that the other option I had was I could download the NBC Sports app, right, which all PlayStation View people have access to. So I grabbed that. I was able to watch it through that. No herky-jerky, no issues, because they weren't having the same problems that PlayStation View was having. Yeah. But then ultimately what I did, because the downside of that one, the sports app, is it doesn't have commercials. It just says we'll be right back when it goes to commercial. You watch the big game to watch commercials.
That's hysterical.
So then I went to Plan C. I plugged back in my over-the-air antenna, through my Tableau. And 5 seconds later, I was recording the game with the Tableau DVR, and I watched the whole thing through the over-the-air broadcast, and I got to see all the commercials. So, just a reminder that cord cutting. Todd talked about it before. It's you pay for the convenience, right?
Yeah.
And so that $100 a month I saved, it required me to spend an extra 5 minutes to figure out how to watch the big game properly.
Yep. So I was going to have some friends over, and then another buddy of mine was throwing a party, so we moved my party to his house. So I'll be honest, I've been cord cutting for about a year now. Over-the-air stuff is a constant struggle that I have. And I have it for a couple of reasons. Number one, because of all the stuff that Shane talked about, the licensing for commercials and all this other stuff, being able to get the station through whatever your streaming app is. Where I'm at in Iowa, View only lets me view the local CBS station live. Everything else is on demand. But for me, the big kicker is the main TV that we have in our house doesn't have a tuner in it. So I can't even run coax to it and just tune it. And so you're like, well, that's obvious because there's a bunch of really easy fixes for that. HD Home Run, Tableau, there's a bunch of those. I have those, but for whatever reason, my Tableau buffers a bunch, like a lot. And my Tableau is hardwired directly into my switch. It's sitting about 1.5 feet away from my switch in my basement. And it's not a Tableau to the network issue. The wireless in my house is not perfect. It's not great, but I stream all manner of other things to that TV through the wireless, and everything's fine. So I don't know exactly what the problem is, but Tableau is just not Tableau for me right now is not to the level where I could have a house full of people over watching the big game and not just constantly be on edge because it's going to come up with that loading screen.
Yeah.
So what I ended up doing is a long time ago, I bought a standalone tuner. You know, when the United States went from analog to digital, these little tuner boxes came out, and I've got that stuffed back behind my TV. And so that just, you hook an antenna up to it. It's a little $30 RCA box. It's a tuner box. And I had that. That works fine, but then I had to run coax to that TV, and I didn't have that. But over-the-air stuff is still the biggest problem that I have. And then I have the HD home run going through Plex. But again, Plex will do that. Sometimes I'll be watching stuff live, and it works great, but then it'll just get stuck. And then I got to go and jimmy with it and fiddle with it. And so
I have not had the live stuff get stuck on those. But I've been also very lucky, right? Because so PlayStation View does NBC, CBS, and Fox for me, and so ABC is the only one that I have to go antenna for.
Yeah, Blake in the chat room is mentioning the rooftop antenna helped him out a lot. I agree with that. What I have found is that these fancy pants, sophisticated things like Tableau and HD Home Run do amazing things, but they are terribly dependent on having a good signal. So I could have like one of my TVs with a tuner hooked up to the same antenna as the Tableau, and if the signal glitches a little bit, the Tableau craps itself, and you get a bunch of pixelization, and the TV's just fine. They just seem way more sensitive to that. So having a good antenna, all that's helped.
All right, next up on our list, this was something we geeked out pretty hard over yesterday.
Yeah.
Right, Falcon Heavy. There is a Tesla on its way to Mars, or Mars orbit, to be more specific, as we speak.
Yeah, that was a pretty cool thing. So you weren't there, but man, like 8 years ago, I can't remember when it was, there was a Tech Ed in Orlando, and the Friday of that week, there was a shuttle launch at Cape Canaveral. So a bunch of us went from the Tech Ed thing and went and saw the shuttle launch. It was amazing. I could spend a half an hour talking about all the great stuff there. But this is just like that, but bigger, but just greater, and it was pretty amazing.
Wait, now my feelings are hurt. I was there.
Sometimes, Shane, when you walk into a room, it feels like somebody left. Like some people, when they walk into a room, do they just fill the room? Sometimes when you walk into a room, are you sure you were there?
I'm going to pout the rest of this show. Nicola was there as well.
Are you sure?
We ate lunch at Pizza Hut.
Oh yeah, okay, so you were there, yeah. So you didn't ride with me though, so maybe that's fine.
Oh my bad, I didn't hold your hand the whole time, so you forgot about me.
There was Matt McDermott, but anyway, that's awesome. So then you saw my kid's an honor student van parked in there with the, yeah, that's good stuff.
I'm sad, I'm done. You have to carry the show out.
Is that what it took? Is that all? Yeah. But this was, so I wish I could have seen it, but this was, Elon Musk, we all love everything that he does. Private, sending big things into space, but they have the regular Falcon 9 rocket, the one they've been shooting satellites and stuff into space with. That's great, but SpaceX, their mission, they want people on Mars. And to get people on Mars and to keep them alive on Mars, turns out it takes a lot of stuff. Maybe you've seen that documentary that Matt Damon made about living on Mars and all the trouble. You need a lot of cargo when you go to Mars, and the current Falcon 9s just weren't up to it. So they needed to have bigger payloads. So Elon's like, well, we got a bunch of those Falcon 9s laying around. What if we just strap a bunch of them together, get some zip ties, and strap a bunch of them together? What about that? And so that was born the Falcon Heavy. And in order to actually use that and be certified, they had to do a test run. And that's what yesterday was. And like Shane said, they had to have test cargo. Normally, he said they put in like concrete blocks or something that's representative of the size and weight of the cargo. But Elon's like, I'm going to do one better. I'm going to shoot my damn car off into space. And it is so cheesy, but it is so awesome.
I mean, it was amazing, right? I made my kids sit down and watch it. I'm like, dude, this is a big deal, right? This is a big deal. And I think, it'll be in a Mars elliptical orbit in October, right? So, I mean, it's not years and years and years of space travel to get out that way. So
it's going to slingshot past the sun. So they had to do some acrobatics around the Earth because the Air Force has got some rules and stuff. So they had to do some stuff around the Earth to show that it was good to go. They did that for about 6 hours last night. That was good to go. So now they're shooting it past the sun, and they're going to do that thing that we've seen in every cheesy science fiction movie. They're going to slingshot around the sun and then catch Mars on the backside. And then Elon Musk's car is just going to orbit Mars till the end of time. And that is pretty. And for those of you that didn't see it, it looked like a regular rocket. It had the nose and all that. And then once it got out of the atmosphere, the nose peeled back. And so his car is actually exposed. It's on a little mount. It's got a mannequin in it. Starman is in it with his hands on the steering wheel. And it is just out. And it's got cameras. So I haven't checked today, but yesterday you could watch the live feed of it.
You're not a human. You're not. Definitely shouldn't watch our show ever again if you haven't seen this and not appreciate it, because seeing BFR, right? That was a code name, BFR.
I have no idea what that would stand for.
Yeah, me neither.
Big friendly rocket.
I think that was it. It's just amazing. Like, I mean, at one point, the cameras, because the cameras are just on, and so the live feed, it's like, oh look, there's the moon in the background. Oh look, there's Australia. Is this Tesla with a guy in a starman in his suit, sitting there? It says "Don't panic" on the screen, just flying through space. It's like a movie, but it's real life.
Yeah, and that was exactly the thing. So after the cone peeled off, the car is just exposed in space and they've got cameras all over. And so the one that Shane's talking about, there's a camera like on the passenger side somewhere, and so it's shooting across. You can see the car, you can see Starman. He's got his hand on the wheel, and then the Earth is in the background as he's just flying past the Earth in his Tesla. It is amazing. And so I did love so Elon Musk, the man's got style, all that. So the "Don't Panic" on the thing from Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy on the screen. He played a bunch of David Bowie songs from Space Oddity in there. It's just so it's just a car flying through space.
Did you see the tweet that shows David Bowie playing Tesla in a movie, and then it says Tesla playing David Bowie?
That's very nice.
That's a good meme.
So part of what makes this whole monumental is space travel is super expensive. And for when NASA was doing it, one of the biggest expenses was rockets. So getting off the Earth, turns out, takes a lot of thrust. But then every time they would shoot something into space, these solid rocket boosters would be lost. And so Musk got this crazy idea, why don't we just keep reusing them? And so this Falcon Heavy had 3 Falcon 9s on it, and they all got everything up into space, and then they just came back and landed. So with some complications. So they had one on each side. And so they had, all this was streaming, they had webcams on all of it. It was just absolutely amazing. So from the rocket's view, the Falcon 9s, you could see them break off, and you could see the camera pointing down that showed them flying themselves back to Earth. They're out in space, hanging out, and they decided to just go ahead and fly back to Earth. So these huge, gigantic, 200-foot tall rockets are flying themselves back to Earth, and in unison, landing on little landing pads, just boop, just kissing the Earth, and they just got to top them off and send them back up.
And that was their second trip, right? Both of those two had been up there before.
Yeah, so they're just reusable rockets that send stuff. So they can go out into space, get the payload out there, and then just throw it in reverse and back right into. So the third one, the center one, it had to stay up a little longer, and so it wasn't able to make it back to ground. The first two landed at Cape Canaveral. The third one had to land on a. I just love saying this out loud. The third rocket came back from space to land on a drone ship out in the middle of the ocean. So, so SpaceX has this ship that's autonomous, and it just follows the rocket and tries to get underneath it. And so the third rocket could land out in the water. It did not make it. That rocket. So at the bottom of these Falcon 9s, they have 27, or is it 9? I forget. I think it's 9 boosters at the bottom. Okay. And 3 of them are what guided in, and they ran out of fuel or something, and 2 of them didn't fire. So the rocket came in too fast, came in hot, and it hit the ship. So they lost that rocket and lost a big part of the ship. But they got 2 of them, which is 2 more than anybody's ever done, ever.
Yeah, I guess it, right, because they were trying, and so they kind of knew there was a higher chance of failure, because this is the first time that they essentially ran it with what they thought was the minimum amount of rocket fuel to get it back. Turns out they missed by like 15 seconds worth of gas. But we were talking about this, Nicola and I make her talk geek with me sometimes, and and essentially, like, rocket fuel is is the heaviest part of this whole go. So every gallon of that you don't send up, that's that much less thrust you have to get it up there. So somebody got there, missed a decimal point or something, but probably not even a decimal point, but awesome.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. So they're gonna dust these things off, and they plan on, I think they have 2 more Falcon Heavy launches this year that they're going to be doing, and they just keep sending them up and bringing those rockets back. It was amazing stuff. And SpaceX, anybody who's followed Tesla or Elon Musk knows the guy is a showman. I mean, that is just That is probably, I mean, he's incredibly smart. He's got great business savvy, but I think his real skill is being a showman. And the whole live feed with SpaceX and interviewing the people, and it was a great thing.
Yeah, we should have done the whole show on this. The heck with all the nerd stuff.
Yeah.
So
I'm sure that's out there. You can watch it, but just amazing watching those rockets. And so like you, I'm talking to my kids about it, and I'm telling them about it. We didn't watch the video, but it was funny, as when you get older, this stuff grabs you more. But my kids are like, so the rockets landed? Well, that's what rockets do, right? I mean, it made no sense. Why would you just shoot the rocket off and then let it fall in the water? Why wouldn't you reuse it? I'm like, because it's really hard not to. Even for 40. Well, yeah, of course you just. Why would you? Like, go away. I don't like you anymore. Fun stuff. Go check that out.
Someone has posted in the chat room so I can see another one of the pictures. Good job, Mark. You're back to non-assistant to the assistant.
There you go. All right. So let's move on to the final stage of the podcast, the shameless self-promotion. First thing that I wanted to mention is a bunch of our friends run user groups, and we've mentioned this before. And one of the toughest part about having user groups is finding people to speak. And so I saw somebody post one last week, and I don't have a link to send you to it, that if you're running a local user group, SharePoint, Office 365, whatever, and you need speakers, let me know, and we'll throw you out here. We'll give you some exposure. Maybe you can get some speakers. Yep.
Then we've got the SharePoint North America Conference coming May 21st through 23rd in Vegas. I'm jazzed.
It's going to be a good time. Yeah, May can't come fast enough. It's going to be a good time. And it seems like every day Microsoft's announcing new cool things that are going to be there and new cool people that are going to be there. So if you haven't already, go out to SharePointNA.com and register for that little soiree they're throwing out in the desert. And if you use the security code or the promotional code Clint, God, man.
See, no one even knows what that is. How do you spell that?
It's my idea. If you use the promo code Clint, KLINDT, you will join many other people who have used the promotional code and being my favorite people in the world. Lots of hugs and things like that when we see you. And you get $50 off the conference.
And if you use Young, you get all those things except my admiration instead of Todd's. So.
And you get cockroaches in your underwear drawer.
Some people like cockroaches. Some people want friends, right? We do a nerd podcast. They don't have a lot of friends. More friends is a positive. So point me.
True. Yep. So Shane and I are doing a couple sessions. I forget what they're all on. But then on Thursday, we're also doing a SharePoint Administrator Day Camp. So it's all you need to know to be a SharePoint Administrator in 2018. We're going to talk on-prem. We're going to talk cloud. We're going to talk identity. We'll talk about it all.
Awesome. Then, if you're planning a little bit further out, you're looking for a smaller, more intimate conference. SP TechCon Boston is in Boston. Imagine that. August 26th through 29th. So if you're planning a little further out, check that one out. Also, they're currently doing a call for speakers.
Yeah.
It's a smaller, it's a more intimate conference. There's a chance you've got a unique topic someone else isn't offered to cover. They need covered. It's a good way to sneak into the speaking circuit sometimes.
Yeah. Big fan of the SP TechCon folks.
I also. Daniel in the chat room wanted me to mention that he's doing a Power Apps webinar tomorrow with the Power Apps team, so it doesn't help anybody listening later. But if you're listening live today, there will be one of those tomorrow. I forget what time it is because he told me at the last second, and it's hard to talk and write and do things at the same time.
In your defense, it's hard for you to talk or write when they're the only things that you're doing.
Yeah, so it's at 10 a.m. Pacific time, a.k.a. 1 o'clock in the real time zone.
And that is when? The 8th?
Tomorrow, yes, the 8th. And then last but not least, I was on another podcast. Neil McDonald has a new podcast with a bunch of SharePoint MVPs talking about more from like a IT leader point of view. He's in Washington, so he got a lot of those people listening. So IT leaders of government organizations and stuff. And so he had me on. I talked about, I think, PowerShell and other things that would probably bore his listeners, but that's what he wanted me to talk about, so I did. So. Well,
if I ever wanted to bring somebody on a podcast to bore my listeners, you would be right up there on the list.
Thanks.
All right, everybody, we went like 10 minutes over. Apologize for that. But we will see you all next week, Wednesday morning, 10 o'clock in the chat room. Thanks, everybody. As always, you can get a hold of us at Todd Clint or at Shane's Cows, and we'll see you next week.
Toodles.